The sound of crushing metal at 6:15 a.m. wasn't an accident, it was a declaration of war. For 57 consecutive Tuesday mornings, Brenda Whitmore deliberately rammed her luxury Escalade into Marcus Holloway's trash cans, believing she was untouchable as the HOA's most feared enforcer. But when this divorced electrician poured 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete into what looked like an ordinary plastic bin, he didn't just protect his property, he exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme that would destroy everything Brenda had built. Stick around to see how one man's trash can became the weapon that brought down a neighborhood tyrant, and drop a comment about where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories of everyday justice travel. Marcus Holloway's calloused hands gripped the steering wheel of his work van as he turned onto Willowbrook Lane, the pristine street he'd called home for the past 3 years. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across manicured lawns that looked more like golf course greens than actual yards where children might play. Each house stood at regulation distance from its neighbor, painted in one of the 5 approved color schemes, their mailboxes aligned with military precision. To anyone driving through Willowbrook Estates, represented the American dream packaged and delivered with a 30-year mortgage and mandatory HOA membership. But Marcus knew better. Behind those perfect facades and pressure-washed driveways lurked something far more sinister than crabgrass or unauthorized garden gnomes. "Dad, why does Mrs. Whitmore always stare at us like that?" his 12-year-old daughter Jasmine asked from the passenger seat, nodding toward the colonial-style house 3 doors down. Marcus followed her gaze to where Brenda Whitmore stood in her driveway, arms crossed, designer sunglasses, reflecting the afternoon light like a predator's eyes. Even from 50 yards away, he could feel her scrutiny cataloging every potential violation as his van pulled into his own driveway. The magnetic sign on his vehicle's door reading Holloway Electrical Services might as well have been a target painted on his back. "Some people just have too much time on their hands, Jazz," Marcus replied, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Come on, let's get inside before your brother eats all the good snacks." As they walked to the front door, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It had been like this ever since the divorce 2 years ago, when Sandra moved out and he'd kept the house. Somehow being a single father in Willowbrook Estates had marked him as different, suspicious, not quite fitting the mold of the perfect suburban family. His 8-year-old son Tyler burst through the door before Marcus could reach for his keys. "Dad! Dad, you gotta see what I built in Minecraft. It's a whole city with electric stuff like you make." "That's amazing, buddy." Marcus ruffled his son's curly hair, genuine warmth replacing the tension in his shoulders. "Show me after dinner, okay? And did you finish your homework?" "Most of it," Tyler said with the kind of honesty that only 8-year-olds possessed. "Most of it isn't all of it," Jasmine chimed in, assuming her role as the responsible older sister. "I'll help him after we eat." This was what mattered, Marcus reminded himself as he set his tool bag down in the entryway. Not the HOA's endless rules or Brenda Whitmore's disapproving glares. His kids were happy, healthy, and thriving despite everything life had thrown at them. The house might have been chosen by Sandra for its prestigious zip code and excellent school district, but Marcus had made it a home through late-night homework sessions, weekend pancake breakfasts, and the controlled chaos that came with raising 2 kids alone. The problems had started small, almost imperceptible at first. A notice about his grass being a 1/4 inch too high. A complaint that his work van was visible from the street for more than the approved 4 hours. A warning about the kids' basketball hoop being 2 shades off from the approved color palette. Marcus had initially brushed these off as standard HOA nonsense, the price of living in a neighborhood where property values were discussed with the reverence usually reserved for religious texts. But then came the Tuesday morning incidents. It was a rainy October morning when it first happened. Marcus had been rushing to get the kids ready for school, juggling breakfast prep with packing lunches, while Tyler searched for his missing shoe, and Jasmine practiced her presentation on the Revolutionary War. He'd heard the crash from the kitchen, the sound of plastic being obliterated mixing with the revving of an engine. By the time he reached the front window, all he saw was the back of Brenda Whitmore's white Escalade disappearing around the corner, his trash can reduced to green plastic shrapnel scattered across his driveway. The garbage bags had exploded on impact, spreading a week's worth of refuse across his lawn like some twisted modern art installation. "Accident," he'd muttered to himself, even as something in his gut told him otherwise. He'd spent 40 minutes cleaning up the mess, making the kids late for school, and himself late for a job that would have paid $300. The next Tuesday, he'd positioned the can more carefully, a full 2 feet from the curb, exactly as the HOA guidelines specified. He'd even taken a photo with his phone documenting the proper placement. But at 6:15 a.m., like clockwork, the crash came again. This time, he caught a glimpse of Brenda through his bedroom window. Her face set in grim determination as she deliberately swerved to hit the can before speeding away. "Dad, why does she keep doing that?" Tyler had asked. After the fourth incident, his young face creased with confusion as they cleaned up soggy garbage in the pre-dawn darkness. "I don't know, buddy," Marcus had replied, though he was beginning to suspect. It was about power, control, putting him in his place. Brenda Whitmore wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of Willowbrook Estates, head of the HOA board for 7 consecutive years, owner of Whitmore Construction, the company that somehow won every bid for neighborhood maintenance and enforcer of a social hierarchy that placed single fathers who worked with their hands somewhere below acceptable. Marcus had tried the diplomatic approach first. He'd knocked on her door on a Saturday afternoon, kids in tow, hoping that the presence of children might soften whatever edge she seemed to have developed toward him. "Mrs. Whitmore," he'd said when she answered, her face perfectly, made up despite it being a weekend, her cream-colored pantsuit pristine. "I wanted to talk to you about the trash can situation." "What situation?" she'd replied. Her voice sweet as artificial sweetener and just as genuine. "You've hit my trash can 4 Tuesdays in a row. I was hoping we could figure out a solution." "I have no idea what you're talking about," she'd said, her eyes sliding over to where Jasmine and Tyler stood. "Perhaps you should teach your children not to make false accusations. It's unbecoming." The door had closed in his face with a decisive click. That night, Marcus had started keeping a journal. Date-time weather conditions damage assessment. His electrician's mind, trained to trace problems to their source, began building a case. But documentation was one thing, proof was another. He'd installed a security camera the 5th week, positioning it to capture the street and his driveway. The footage was damning. There was Brenda, clear as day, deliberately swerving her $60,000 SUV to demolish his trash can before continuing her morning routine. The timestamp read 6:15 a.m. exactly. Armed with evidence, Marcus had attended the next HOA meeting, held in the community center that smelled of lemon pledge and broken dreams. The board sat at a raised table at the front of the room, like a tribunal. Brenda at the center, flanked by her vice president Harold Morrison, a retired insurance adjuster who found purpose in measuring grass height, and Secretary Linda Chen, who took minutes with the intensity of a court reporter at a murder trial. "I'd like to address an ongoing issue," Marcus had said when the floor opened for homeowner concerns. "Please state your name and address for the record," Brenda had said, as if she didn't know exactly who he was. "Marcus Holloway, 247 Willowbrook Lane. For the past 5 weeks, my trash can has been deliberately destroyed every Tuesday morning." He'd connected his phone to the projection system, the video playing on the white wall behind the board. "As you can see from this security footage—" "That footage could be doctored," Brenda interrupted, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "And frankly, Mr. Holloway, I'm concerned about the installation of surveillance equipment without board approval." Section 7. Subsection 3 of the HOA bylaws clearly states, "You're joking, right?" Marcus had said, incredulity overcoming politeness. "You're on video destroying my property, and you're citing me for the camera that caught you." "I see no conclusive proof that's me in that video," Brenda had replied smoothly. "It could be anyone driving a white SUV. However, your unauthorized surveillance equipment is a clear violation. Motion to issue a warning to Mr. Holloway for the installation of non-approved exterior modifications." "Seconded," Harold had chimed in immediately. "All in favor." Brenda hadn't even waited for discussion. The vote was unanimous. Marcus left the meeting with a formal warning and a $250 fine for the camera while his destroyed trash cans remained unaddressed. That night, as he tucked Tyler into bed, his son had asked, "Dad, why don't we just move?" Marcus had sat on the edge of the race car-themed bed, considering his answer. The truth was complicated. The divorce had nearly bankrupted him. Sandra had gotten half of everything, including his savings, but none of the debt from the business loan he'd taken to expand his electrical company. The house payment was manageable only because he'd refinanced at a good rate. Moving would mean uprooting the kids from their schools, their friends, the stability he'd fought so hard to maintain. "Because this is our home," he'd finally said. "And sometimes you have to stand up to bullies even when it's hard." Like Captain America, Tyler had asked hopefully. "Something like that, buddy." But Captain America had a shield made of vibranium. All Marcus had was a new trash can every week, and a growing sense of rage that threatened to consume him. The 6th week, he'd tried leaving the can in a different spot. Brenda had found it anyway, backing up 30 feet to ensure maximum impact. The 7th week, he'd used bungee cords to secure it to a post. She'd torn the post out of the ground. The 8th week, he'd tried getting up early to move the can immediately after the garbage truck passed. She'd circled back an hour later to hit it anyway. The psychological warfare extended beyond Tuesday mornings. Brenda began filing complaints with surgical precision. His hedges were suddenly an inch too tall. The oil stain on his driveway from where he'd fixed Mrs. Patterson's car as a favor was deemed an eyesore. The chalk art Tyler drew on their own sidewalk was vandalism. Each violation came with fines, letters, threats of liens. The Nextdoor app became her weapon of choice for character assassination. Posts about certain residents who didn't maintain standards veiled references to the wrong element moving into the neighborhood, concerns about children being unsupervised, never mentioning Marcus by name, but making it crystal clear who she meant. "I heard what she's been saying," his next-door neighbor Robert Kim had said one evening as they both worked in their yards. Robert was a software engineer, a quiet man who kept to himself but had always been friendly. "It's bullshit, Marcus. Your kids are great and you take better care of your property than half the people here." "Thanks, Robert," Marcus had replied, grateful for the support. "But Brenda seems to have it out for me." "She has it out for anyone who doesn't kiss her ass," Robert had said, lowering his voice. "Did you know she tried to fine the Johnsons for having the wrong shade of beige on their shutters? They'd lived here for 15 years before she moved in." "Where are the Johnsons now?" "They moved. Couldn't take it anymore." That conversation had planted a seed in Marcus's mind. How many others had Brenda driven out? How many families had she terrorized into submission or exile? He started talking to more neighbors carefully, quietly. The stories poured out in whispered conversations over fence lines and during chance encounters at the mailbox. There was David Martinez, a retired Marine who'd been fined for flying an American flag that was supposedly too large. Sarah Walsh, a single mother like himself who'd been harassed about her daughter's sidewalk lemonade stand. The elderly Thompsons who'd received violation notices while Mr. Thompson was in the hospital recovering from heart surgery. But fear kept them silent. Brenda had connections at the city planning office influence with local contractors who might suddenly be unavailable for repairs and a vindictive streak that made crossing her costly in more ways than one. Week 12 arrived with a special delivery. Marcus opened his door to find a process server with a thick envelope. "Marcus Holloway?" the man asked. "That's me. You're being sued for harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Have a nice day." Brenda was suing him for the security footage, claiming he'd edited it to make her look bad and shared it with neighbors to damage her reputation. The lawsuit sought $50,000 in damages, more than Marcus had in his entire retirement account. That night, after the kids were asleep, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a beer and the lawsuit papers spread before him. His hand, steady enough to wire a house in the dark, trembled as he read through the legal jargon. This wasn't just about trash cans anymore. Brenda was trying to destroy him financially, to force him out through sheer economic pressure. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have just moved when you had the chance. This is only the beginning." Marcus knew it was her, even though the number was blocked. The timing was too perfect, the threat too specific. He screenshotted it anyway, adding it to his growing file of evidence that seemed to matter to no one but him. Jasmine found him there the next morning, having fallen asleep at the table amid the legal papers. "Dad," she said softly, concern etched on her young face. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," he lied, gathering the papers before she could read them. "Just some boring adult stuff." "Is it about Mrs. Whitmore?" Marcus looked at his daughter, surprised by her perception. "What makes you think that?" "Everyone at school knows she hates us," Jasmine said matter-of-factly. "Brittany Whitmore told everyone her mom says we're trash that needs to be taken out." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. It was one thing for Brenda to come after him, but his kids, that crossed a line he couldn't ignore. "Listen to me, Jazz," he said, pulling her into a hug. "We are not trash. We're a family, and we belong here just as much as anyone else. Don't let anyone tell you different." "I know, Dad, but why does she hate us so much?" Marcus wished he had an answer that would make sense to a 12-year-old. How could he explain that some people needed to feel superior, needed to have someone to look down on? That being a single father who worked with his hands instead of in an office marked him as lesser in Brenda's eyes. That his very existence in her perfect neighborhood was an affront to the image she'd cultivated. "Some people are just unhappy inside," he finally said, "and instead of fixing themselves, they try to break everyone else." That weekend, Marcus did something he'd been avoiding for months. He called his brother James in Chicago. "Let me get this straight," James said after Marcus explained the situation. "This crazy woman has been destroying your property for 3 months, and nobody will do anything about it. The cops say it's a civil matter. The HOA board is basically her personal kingdom, and now she's suing me for trying to document it." "Man, you need to fight fire with fire. Remember when we were kids and Tommy Morrison kept stealing your lunch money?" Marcus smiled despite himself. "Yeah, until I filled my lunchbox with shaving cream and glitter. Took him weeks to get it all off." "Exactly. You can't fight fair with someone who doesn't play fair. What's the plan?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, "but I'm done being her punching bag." That evening, while the kids did homework, Marcus retreated to his garage workshop. His hands needed to be busy while his mind worked through the problem. He'd rebuilt this entire electrical panel from scratch, organized every tool, created order from chaos. There had to be a solution to the Brenda problem that didn't involve moving or bankruptcy. As he sorted through boxes of supplies, his hand landed on a bag of concrete mix left over from fixing the front steps. He stared at it, an idea beginning to form. It was crazy. It was probably illegal. But then again, so was vehicular destruction of property, and nobody seemed to care about that. "Dad," Tyler's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Can you help me with my science project?" "Sure, buddy. What's it about?" "We're supposed to build something that demonstrates Newton's laws of motion. You know, like how when things hit each other, the force goes both ways." Marcus looked at his son, then at the bag of concrete, then back at his son. "Tyler, I think you just gave me a brilliant idea." "Really cool. Can we build it together?" "Actually, yeah, we can, but first, let me ask you something. If someone kept breaking your toys on purpose, what would you do?" Tyler thought for a moment, his face serious. "I'd make toys that couldn't break." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. "That's exactly right, son. That's exactly what we're going to do." The next day, Marcus drove to the hardware store with a mental shopping list that would have seemed insane to anyone else. Concrete mix rebar industrial adhesive and a plastic trash can identical to the ones he'd been buying weekly. The teenager at the checkout didn't even blink. This was Florida, after all, where people bought strange combinations of things all the time. Back in his garage with the door closed and the kids at school, Marcus began his project. First, he created a frame of rebar, welding it together with precision. This would be the skeleton, the core that would transfer every ounce of impact force back to whatever hit it. Around this, he poured concrete layer by layer, building up a solid mass that weighed nearly 60 pounds. The genius was in the exterior. Using the industrial adhesive and careful cutting, he wrapped the concrete core in the plastic shell of a normal trash can. From the outside, it looked identical to every can he'd put out for the past 12 weeks. But inside, it was a fortress. As he worked, Marcus thought about everything that had led to this moment. The divorce that had nearly broken him, but hadn't. The long nights learning to braid Jasmine's hair from YouTube videos. The Saturday mornings teaching Tyler to throw a baseball. The electrical jobs he'd worked in 100-degree heat to keep the mortgage paid. He'd survived all of that. He could survive Brenda Whitmore. His phone rang as he was adding the final touches. It was Robert Kim. "Hey Marcus, heads up, Brenda's been going around the neighborhood with a petition." "A petition for what?" "To have you removed from the neighborhood for being a nuisance. She's claiming your trash cans being constantly destroyed is bringing down property values." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity was almost admirable. She's destroying them herself and using that as grounds to remove me. I know it's insane, but she's got Harold and Linda going door to door with her. They're pressuring people, especially the elderly residents. Mrs. Patterson already signed because Brenda threatened to report her cat for being outside without a leash. Mrs. Patterson's cat is 18 years old and can barely walk. Logic isn't really the point here. She's building a case. Sarah Walsh overheard her at the grocery store saying she's going to make an example of you show everyone what happens when they don't respect the HOA authority. After hanging up, Marcus stood in his garage looking at his creation. Part of him wondered if he was going too far. But then he thought about Jasmine coming home in tears because Brenda Whitmore had told everyone her dad was trash. He thought about Tyler asking why some people were so mean. He thought about every family Brenda had driven from their homes. No, he wasn't going too far. If anything, he wasn't going far enough. That evening, he called a family meeting. Jasmine and Tyler sat at the kitchen table looking serious. I want to talk to you both about what's been happening with Mrs. Whitmore, Marcus began. I know you've noticed the problems we've been having. She's a bully, Tyler said simply. Yes, she is, and I've tried to handle this the right way through proper channels, but sometimes the system doesn't work the way it should. So what are you going to do? Jasmine asked. I'm going to stand up to her, but I need you both to understand something. Standing up to bullies can be messy. People might say things about us. It might get uncomfortable. But I promise you I will never let anyone hurt our family or drive us from our home. We're not going anywhere, Tyler said firmly. This is our house. That's right, buddy. This is our house. Jasmine reached across the table and took his hand. We're with you, Dad, whatever happens. That night, Marcus placed his special trash can at the curb. It looked exactly like every other can he'd put out green plastic glinting under the streetlight. But this one was different. This one was ready. He barely slept, adrenaline and anticipation keeping him wired. At 6:00 a.m., he was at his bedroom window, camera in hand. The street was quiet, peaceful in the way suburban neighborhoods were before the day began. A few early joggers passed by. Mr. Thompson walked his ancient golden retriever. At 6:14, he saw the white Escalade round the corner. Brenda was nothing if not punctual. The SUV approached at its usual speed, maybe 25 miles per hour. Marcus could see her through the windshield, that same grim determination on her face. She jerked the wheel right, aiming for the can. The impact was tremendous. Instead of the satisfying crunch of plastic she'd grown accustomed to, there was a sound like a sledgehammer hitting concrete, because that's exactly what it was. The Escalade's front bumper crumpled instantly. The headlight exploded. The wheel well bent inward with a shriek of metal. And the can didn't move an inch. Brenda's face transformed from smug satisfaction to shock to rage in the span of 3 seconds. She threw the SUV in reverse, backed up, and hit the can again. This time the grinding sound was even worse. Something under the hood started hissing. Fluid leaked onto the asphalt. Marcus filmed it all, fighting to keep the camera steady as he tried not to laugh. She hit it a third time, and the Escalade's airbag deployed, smacking her in the face with a powder explosion that left her looking like a deranged ghost. By now, neighbors were emerging from their houses. Robert Kim stood on his lawn in pajamas and slippers, mouth agape. Sarah Walsh had her phone out recording. Even Harold Morrison had come out, though he quickly retreated when he saw the state of Brenda's vehicle. Brenda stumbled out of the Escalade, her perfect composure completely shattered. Her hair was wild, her face covered in airbag powder, her designer workout outfit torn. She stood there staring at the unmoved trash can like it had personally betrayed her. "What did you do?" she screamed at Marcus's house. "What did you do to it?" Marcus stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, the picture of suburban calm. "Morning. Brenda, car trouble. You sabotaged it. You booby-trapped it." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Marcus said, echoing her words from weeks ago. "That's just my regular trash can. Maybe you should be more careful when you're driving." She lunged toward his yard, but Robert Kim stepped forward. "I saw the whole thing, Brenda. You deliberately rammed his property 3 times. That's vehicular assault. Stay out of this, Robert," she snarled. "Actually," Sarah Walsh said, approaching with her phone still recording, "I think we should all be very involved in this. I've watched you terrorize this man for months. We all have." More neighbors were gathering now. The Thompsons, David Martinez, even some of the newer residents Marcus didn't know well. There was something different in the air, a shift in the invisible power dynamic that had kept Brenda untouchable for so long. "You're all going to regret this," Brenda hissed. "I'll have every one of you brought up on violations. I'll make your lives hell." "You mean like you've been doing already?" Mrs. Patterson called out, her elderly voice carrying surprising strength. "I'm done being afraid of you, Brenda Whitmore." The tow truck arrived 40 minutes later, hauling away the Escalade with its front end destroyed, fluids leaking, airbags deployed. Brenda had to call Harold for a ride, standing on the curb like a bedraggled queen whose carriage had turned back into a pumpkin. As Marcus watched her go, Tyler and Jasmine joined him on the porch. "Dad," Tyler said, eyes wide. "That was awesome." It was pretty cool," Jasmine agreed, trying to maintain her 12-year-old dignity while clearly impressed. "Remember what I said about standing up to bullies?" Marcus asked them. "This is just the beginning. She's going to come back harder." "Then we'll be ready," Jasmine said firmly. Marcus looked at his kids, feeling a surge of pride. They were tougher than he'd given them credit for. They'd weathered the divorce, the move, the constant harassment, and they were still standing strong. But Jasmine was right about one thing: Brenda would be back. And when she came, it wouldn't be with just an SUV. Marcus could see it in her eyes as Harold's car drove her away. This was war now, and Brenda Whitmore didn't lose wars. At least she hadn't yet. The next morning arrived with an ominous silence. No angry emails, no violation notices slipped under the door. No mysterious city inspectors appearing at 7 a.m. Marcus knew better than to trust this calm. In his experience with electrical systems, the quiet before a surge was when you should be most worried. "Dad, why are you pacing?" Jasmine asked over breakfast, watching him move between the window and the coffee maker for the 5th time. "Just thinking, sweetheart." "About Mrs. Whitmore." Marcus sat down, forcing himself to be still. "Yeah, about Mrs. Whitmore." Tyler looked up from his cereal milk dripping from his spoon. "Maybe she gave up. Her car looked really broken." "People like Brenda Whitmore don't give up," Marcus said, then caught himself. He shouldn't be poisoning his kids against neighbors, even neighbors who deserved it. But don't worry about it. That's adult stuff. The knock came at 9 a.m. sharp, just as Marcus was heading out for a job. 2 police officers stood on his porch looking uncomfortable. "Marcus Holloway?" the older officer asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "That's me. We've received a complaint about a hazardous trap being set on your property. We need to take a look at your trash can." Marcus almost laughed. "My trash can. The one that's been destroyed every week for the past 3 months. Sir, we're just following up on a complaint. May we examine the container?" Marcus led them to the garage where he'd stored the concrete can after the morning's incident. The officers examined it carefully, one of them actually smiling slightly. "This is just concrete inside a regular can exterior," the younger officer asked. "That's right. Nothing illegal about making a durable trash can, is there?" The older officer sighed. "No, sir. Nothing illegal, though I'd advise you to be careful. These neighbor disputes can escalate quickly." "Officer, they've already escalated. I filed multiple reports about my property being destroyed. Nothing was done." "Those reports show the incidents as accidents." "Because that's what she claimed, despite video evidence showing otherwise." The officers exchanged glances. The younger one looked like he wanted to say something supportive, but the older one shook his head slightly. "Just be careful, Mr. Holloway. Both of you." After they left, Marcus's phone rang. It was Robert Kim. "Emergency meeting tonight," Robert said without preamble. "Brenda's called a special session, 7 p.m. She's going nuclear." The community center that evening was packed. Marcus had never seen so many residents at an HOA meeting. Usually it was just the board and a handful of unfortunate souls dealing with violations. Tonight it looked like half the neighborhood had shown up. Brenda sat at the center of the board table, her face repaired with careful makeup, but unable to hide the slight bruising from the airbag. She changed into a power suit, red like war paint, her hands folded in front of her like a judge about to pass sentence. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began, her voice carrying that fake sweetness that made Marcus's skin crawl. "We have a serious safety issue to address. As many of you witnessed this morning, a dangerous trap was set in our neighborhood, resulting in significant property damage and personal injury. You ran into his trash can, Sarah Walsh called out from the back. We all saw it. Order, Brenda snapped, hitting a gavel she'd apparently bought just for this occasion. There will be no outbursts. As I was saying, this act of vandalism and public endangerment cannot be tolerated. I move to impose a special assessment on the responsible party for creating a public hazard. How much? Someone asked. $15,000, Brenda said smoothly. To cover the cost of increased security measures and legal consultation to prevent future incidents. The room erupted. Marcus stood up, his anger finally boiling over. You want to fine me $15,000 because you deliberately destroyed your own car on my property. Mr. Holloway, you admit it was your property that caused the damage. My property was sitting still on my own land. You hit it with your vehicle multiple times. I was swerving to avoid a cat, Brenda said with practiced calm. Your booby trap turned a minor accident into a major incident. There was no cat. Robert Kim stood up. I filmed the whole thing. You aimed directly for his trash can, just like you have every Tuesday for months. Alleged incidents that were never proven, Brenda replied. Marcus felt his phone vibrate. A text from an unknown number. Check your email now. DM. He glanced at his phone, opening his email to find a message from David Martinez with a dozen attachments. The subject line read, Ammo for tonight. If I may, Marcus said, connecting his phone to the projection system before anyone could stop him. I'd like to present some evidence. The first video started playing. It was security footage from David Martinez's house showing Brenda's Escalade from a different angle, clearly showing her deliberately swerving to hit Marcus's can 6 weeks ago. That's inadmissible, Brenda started, but Marcus was already playing the next video. This one was from Sarah Walsh's doorbell camera, showing Brenda at 2 a.m. creeping onto Marcus's property to photograph his vehicle's measuring tape in hand. Invasion of privacy, Brenda shouted. The third video was the killer. It was from Brenda's own social media, a Facebook Live she'd forgotten was recording, where she explicitly told someone on the phone, I'm going to make that single father's life so miserable he'll have to move. This neighborhood has standards. The room went silent. Marcus clicked to the next file. These are public records showing that Whitmore Construction has received every HOA contract for the past 7 years. Total value $247,000. All legitimate bids, Brenda said, but her voice had lost its confidence. Really? Because these are the other bids submitted. Marcus clicked again. Notice anything interesting? They're all from companies that don't exist. Shell companies with names remarkably similar to Whitmore Construction's subsidiaries. Harold Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Linda Chen had stopped taking minutes entirely, staring at the screen in shock. This is a witch hunt, Brenda hissed. You're trying to destroy me because I enforce the rules that keep our property values high. No, Mrs. Patterson said, standing up with difficulty, her aged hands gripping her walker. You're a bully and a thief, Brenda Whitmore, and we're done with it. The elderly woman's words seemed to break a dam. Suddenly everyone was talking at once, sharing stories of harassment, unfair fines, intimidation tactics. The Johnsons hadn't just moved, they'd been driven out after Brenda threatened to report them to immigration, despite them being third-generation Americans. The previous board treasurer had resigned after Brenda accused him of embezzlement, only for her to take over the finances herself. Order, order. Brenda screamed, banging her gavel so hard it cracked. I move for a vote of no confidence in the board president, Robert Kim announced. You can't do that. There are procedures, bylaws. Actually, a new voice said from the back, he can. Everyone turned to see a woman in a business suit entering the room. She was young, maybe early 30s, with the confident bearing of someone who knew exactly how much power they wielded. I'm Jennifer Martinez, David Martinez's daughter, and a property law attorney. I've been reviewing the HOA bylaws at my father's request. Article 12, Section 3 clearly states that a vote of no confidence can be called by any member in good standing if supported by 10% of the homeowners present. All in favor of the vote of no confidence, Robert called out. Hands shot up across the room. Marcus didn't even try to count them all. It was clearly more than 10%. Then I call for the vote, Robert continued. All in favor of removing Brenda Whitmore as HOA president. The sea of hands was overwhelming. Even Harold Morrison slowly raised his hand, avoiding Brenda's poisonous glare. All opposed. 3 hands. Brenda's and 2 others Marcus didn't recognize, probably relatives or business associates she'd brought for support. The motion passes, Jennifer Martinez announced. Mrs. Whitmore, you are hereby removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Brenda stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You can't do this. I've given 7 years to this community. I've maintained standards. I've kept the riffraff out. Riffraff like single fathers who work for a living, Marcus asked quietly. Yes, Brenda screamed, finally dropping all pretense. Like you, with your commercial vehicle and your unkempt children and your middle-class sensibilities, you don't belong here. This is an exclusive community for quality people. My children are standing right there, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm as he noticed Jasmine and Tyler had slipped in to watch from the doorway. Good. They should know they're not wanted here. The slap came from an unexpected source. Linda Chen, the quiet secretary who'd never said a word against Brenda in 7 years, struck her across the face with enough force to snap Brenda's head sideways. How dare you speak about children that way? Linda said, her voice shaking with rage. How dare you? 2 more police officers entered the room, different from the ones who'd visited Marcus that morning. These ones looked far more serious. Brenda Whitmore, one of them asked. What now? She snarled, holding her reddening cheek. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and filing false police reports. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed her, Brenda's facade finally cracked completely. This is his fault. That trash man. He ruined everything. I had a perfect system, perfect control, perfect. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, the officer continued, unmoved by her breakdown. Harold, tell them how we worked everything out, the contracts, the kickbacks, all of it. Harold Morrison went pale. I don't know what she's talking about. You coward. You took your cut every month, 15% of every contract. The officers looked at Harold with renewed interest. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us as well. As they led Brenda away, she turned back one last time, her eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. This isn't over, Holloway. I'll destroy you. I'll take everything you have. Ma'am, I really need you to stop talking, her arresting officer said wearily. After the police left with Brenda and Harold, the room remained in stunned silence for a moment. Then Mrs. Patterson started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined in until the entire room was applauding. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the attention, but Jasmine and Tyler ran to him, wrapping him in a hug. Dad, you did it, Tyler exclaimed. You beat the bad guy. We all did it, Marcus corrected, looking around the room at his neighbors. Every one of us who stood up tonight. Robert Kim approached, shaking Marcus's hand. We need an interim president until we can hold proper elections. I nominate Marcus Holloway. Oh no, Marcus said quickly. I don't want any position of power. I just wanted to take out my trash in peace. Then how about me? Sarah Walsh suggested. I've got experience with nonprofit boards, and I promise my first act will be to reverse every frivolous fine from the past year. The vote was unanimous. Later that evening, as Marcus tucked Tyler into bed, his son asked, Dad, why was Mrs. Whitmore so mean? Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, considering how to explain the complexities of human nature to an 8-year-old. Sometimes people feel so small inside that they try to make themselves feel bigger by making others feel smaller. Does that make sense? Like Billy at school who calls kids names because he's bad at math? Exactly like that buddy, but on a grown-up scale. That's sad. It is sad, but it's also not an excuse to hurt others. Tyler nodded solemnly, then brightened. Can we keep the concrete trash can? Marcus laughed. Actually, I was thinking we could mount it in the garage, like a trophy. Cool. Can we paint it? Sure, buddy. Whatever you want. Down the hall, Jasmine was at her desk working on something on her laptop. Marcus knocked on her doorframe. Homework. No, I'm writing about tonight for my social studies project on civic engagement. Miss Rodriguez said we could get extra credit for attending a town meeting. I don't think she expected something like this. Marcus looked over her shoulder at the title, How My Dad Fought Corruption with a Trash Can, a Case Study in Standing Up to Bullies. That's quite a title. It's accurate, Jasmine said simply. Dad, I'm proud of you. You showed everyone that one person can make a difference. I had a lot of help. Yeah, but you started it. You stood up first when everyone else was too scared. Marcus kissed the top of her head. Get to bed soon, okay? School tomorrow. 10 more minutes. 15, but that's it. As Marcus headed to his own room, his phone buzzed with messages. Neighbors thanking him, offering support, sharing their own stories. David Martinez had sent another message. Your dad would be proud. You fought for what was right. Marcus hadn't thought about his father in a while. The man who'd taught him to work with his hands, to take pride in honest labor, to stand up straight even when the world tried to bend you. He would have loved to see Brenda carted off in handcuffs. The next morning arrived quiet and peaceful. No crashes, no sirens, no angry confrontations. Marcus made pancakes for the kids, helped Tyler find his missing library book, braided Jasmine's hair for her basketball practice after school. Normal morning chaos, the kind he actually enjoyed. As he loaded his van for work, Robert Kim walked over with a coffee and a grin. Did you see the news? Brenda's being held without bail. Apparently the embezzlement goes deeper than we thought. The state attorney's office is involved now. How deep? Try $500,000 over 7 years when you include all the shell companies and inflated invoices. She was billing the HOA for work that was never done, approving her own invoices the whole 9 yards. Marcus whistled low. That's serious prison time. Yep, and Harold flipped immediately. Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's got records going back to the beginning. What about the third board member, Linda? Clean, apparently. She was as shocked as anyone. Brenda kept her in the dark, only let her handle the meeting minutes, never the finances. Marcus felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Brenda had built an empire of petty tyranny and corruption, and it had all come crashing down because she couldn't resist tormenting one single father who'd finally had enough. There's something else, Robert said, looking almost embarrassed. The neighborhood wants to do something for you, a thank you. That's not necessary. Marcus, you spent hundreds of dollars on trash cans that got destroyed. You paid fines you didn't deserve. You stood up to a bully when the rest of us were too scared. Let us do this. What did you have in mind? Come to the community center Saturday, 2 p.m. Bring the kids. Saturday arrived with perfect Florida weather, the kind that made people forget about hurricanes and humidity. Marcus walked with Jasmine and Tyler to the community center, curious about what his neighbors had planned. The parking lot was full, which was unusual for a weekend. As they approached the entrance, Marcus could hear music and voices from inside. Surprise! The shout came from what looked like the entire neighborhood as they entered. A banner hung across the room. Thank you, Marcus Holloway, our neighborhood hero. Dad, this is for you, Tyler said excitedly, pointing at a table laden with food, another with a stack of cards and gifts. Sarah Walsh approached with a box. We took up a collection. This should cover all those destroyed trash cans and then some. Marcus opened the box to find a check for $5,000. I can't accept this. You can and you will, Mrs. Patterson interrupted, Walker and all. It's the least we can do. Jennifer Martinez, David's daughter, stepped forward with a folder. And this is from me pro bono. I'm handling your defense against Brenda's lawsuit, which we're countersuing for harassment, property damage, and defamation. She'll be dropping her suit by Monday, I guarantee it. The afternoon became a blur of handshakes, hugs, and stories. Neighbors Marcus had never spoken to came up to share how Brenda had terrorized them. The Nguyens had been fined for their daughter's birthday party being too loud at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. The Garcias had received violations for their Virgin Mary statue being unapproved religious decoration. Everyone had a story, and everyone was grateful that someone had finally stood up. As the sun began to set and the party wound down, Marcus found himself standing outside with David Martinez watching their kids play basketball on the court. You know what the funny thing is, David said. She could have just left you alone. If she hadn't gone after your trash cans, none of this would have happened. Pride goeth before a fall, Marcus quoted his grandmother. Something like that. Though I prefer another saying, mess with the bull, get the horns. Or mess with the trash can, get the concrete, Marcus added with a grin. They laughed, and Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. This was his neighborhood now, truly his. Not because an HOA approved it, but because his neighbors had stood with him when it mattered. That evening, as Marcus sat on his porch watching the sunset, Tyler and Jasmine beside him, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. The divorce, the struggles, the harassment, it had all led to this moment of peace. Dad, Jasmine said, do you think Brenda learned her lesson? Marcus considered the question. I don't know, sweetheart. Some people learn from their mistakes, others just blame everyone else. Which one do you think she is? Honestly, I think she's probably sitting in a cell right now, convinced this is all my fault and planning her revenge. Aren't you worried? Marcus pulled both his kids closer. No, because here's what Brenda never understood. It was never just about me. It was about all of us, the whole neighborhood standing up for what's right. She thought she could isolate and bully people one at a time. But once we stood together, she didn't stand a chance. Like the Avengers, Tyler said sagely. Exactly like the Avengers. As darkness fell and the streetlights came on, Marcus noticed something different about the neighborhood. People were out on their porches, kids were playing in yards, neighbors were talking over fences. The invisible walls Brenda had built with fear and intimidation were coming down. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, his heart jumped, expecting another threat. But when he opened it, he laughed out loud. It was from the local news station. Mr. Holloway, we'd like to interview you about your creative solution to HOA harassment. Can you call us back to... What is it, Dad? Jasmine asked. Looks like our story's going viral, kids. Are we going to be famous? Tyler asked excitedly. For about 15 minutes maybe, but that's not what matters. What matters? Jasmine asked. Marcus looked at his children, his home, his neighborhood, all the things he'd fought to protect. What matters is that we stood our ground. We didn't let a bully drive us away. And we learned that sometimes the best way to deal with someone who wants to treat you like garbage is to be as solid as concrete. The concrete trash can still sits in Marcus's garage, painted in bright colors by Tyler and Jasmine, with signatures from neighbors who attended the party. It's become something of a local legend, with people stopping by to take pictures with it. But 3 months later, something unexpected happened that would test Marcus's resolve once again. A moving truck pulled up to Brenda's former house, which had been seized as part of the criminal proceedings. The new owners were a young couple with twin toddlers excited about their first home. Everything seemed perfect until Marcus noticed the woman's maiden name on a package delivery, Whitmore. She was Brenda's younger sister, and she'd come to Willowbrook Estates with an agenda of her own. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase. That evening, as Marcus watched the new neighbors unload their furniture, his phone rang. It was Sarah Walsh. Did you see who bought Brenda's house? Yeah, I saw. Marcus, she introduced herself to me. Said she's here to restore the family name and correct the injustices done to her sister. Marcus sighed, looking at the concrete can in his garage. Then I guess we'd better be ready. You think she'll come after you? Oh, I'm counting on it. But this time we're all ready. This time we know what we're dealing with. As he hung up, Jasmine appeared in the garage doorway. Dad, is that Brenda's sister moving in? Yes, sweetheart. Are we going to have to fight again? Marcus put his arm around his daughter, looking at the concrete can that had started it all. Maybe. But if we do, we know how to win. We stand together, we document everything, and we never, ever back down from bullies. And we make really strong trash cans, Marcus laughed, hugging his daughter tight. And we make really strong trash cans. The sound of a car door slamming drew their attention. Brenda's sister stood in her driveway staring directly at them. She was younger than Brenda, prettier in a conventional way, but her eyes held the same cold calculation. She walked over with purposeful strides, stopping at the property line. Mr. Holloway, I presume. That's right, and you are. Catherine Whitmore Davies. I believe you knew my sister. I did. I want you to know that I'm not my sister. I believe in fresh starts. That's good to hear. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. However, I also believe in family loyalty, and I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding about what happened here. No misunderstanding. Your sister committed fraud and assault. It's all documented. Documentation can be interpreted many ways, Mr. Holloway. I'm a forensic accountant by profession. I specialize in finding the truth in numbers that others might have misrepresented. The threat was subtle, but clear. She was here to try to prove her sister's innocence, or at least muddy the waters enough to cause problems. Well, welcome to the neighborhood, Mrs. Davies. I hope you'll be happy here. Oh, I intend to be. Very happy, and very involved in the community. In fact, I'm thinking of running for the HOA board. I hear there are some vacancies. With that, she turned and walked back to her house, leaving Marcus and Jasmine standing in the garage. She seems nice, Jasmine said sarcastically, showing she'd inherited her father's sense of humor. Yeah, real nice, Marcus agreed. Go inside and help your brother with homework. I need to make some calls. As Jasmine went inside, Marcus pulled out his phone and created a new group text with Robert, Sarah, David, and Jennifer Martinez. His message was simple. Brenda's sister just moved in. She's planning to run for the board. We need to meet. The responses came quickly, all variations of concern and determination. They'd won one battle, but the war for Willowbrook Estates was far from over. Marcus looked at the concrete trash can one more time. It had started as a desperate act of defiance, a way to fight back against a bully. But it had become something more, a symbol that ordinary people could stand up to corruption and intimidation. Whatever Catherine Whitmore Davies had planned, Marcus and his neighbors would be ready. They'd learned to fight together, and that made all the difference. The trash can war had evolved, but the principles remained the same. Stand your ground, protect your family, and never let bullies win. The emergency meeting convened in Robert Kim's living room that very night after the kids were in bed. Sarah Walsh had brought coffee and her laptop. David Martinez carried a box of documents he'd been collecting since Brenda's arrest, and Jennifer Martinez arrived with legal pads and the kind of focused intensity that made Marcus glad she was on their side. She's not wasting any time, Sarah said, pulling up the Nextdoor app on her phone. Catherine's already posted an introduction talking about her experience in forensic accounting and her desire to heal the community's financial wounds. Financial wounds she's implying we caused, Robert added grimly. Look at the comments. She's got 3 people already saying they never trusted the investigation into Brenda. Marcus read through the posts, his jaw tightening. Catherine was clever, much cleverer than her sister. Where Brenda had ruled through intimidation, Catherine was using sympathy and doubt, positioning herself as a concerned citizen wanting to uncover the truth about her sister's persecution. She's going to request an audit, Jennifer said, seeing the pattern immediately. She'll frame it as transparency and fiscal responsibility. Get herself on the board, then use her position to access all the financial records. She's looking for anything she can use to create reasonable doubt for Brenda's appeal. Can she do that? David asked. The audit, yes, if she gets enough support. It's actually a reasonable request given everything that's happened. That's what makes it dangerous. She's not coming in guns blazing like Brenda. She's using legitimate channels. Marcus's phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time he recognized the area code as local. He showed it to the group before answering on speaker. Mr. Holloway, this is Channel 7 News. We're following up on the HOA story from Willowbrook Estates. We understand there's been a new development with the former president's sister moving into the neighborhood. Marcus looked at the others, who all shook their heads. No comment at this time, he said, and hung up. How did they know already? Sarah wondered. Catherine called them, Jennifer said with certainty. She's going to use media pressure, paint herself as the reasonable one trying to clean up a mess while suggesting we're hiding something. The next morning proved Jennifer right. Marcus woke to find a news van parked outside his house, and Catherine Whitmore Davies giving an interview on his own street, positioned so his house was clearly visible in the background. I'm simply asking for transparency, Catherine was saying to the reporter, her voice carrying the perfect tone of concerned reasonableness. My sister maintained her innocence, and I believe a thorough independent audit would reveal the truth. If everything was above board, why would anyone object to a review? Marcus watched from his window as several neighbors stopped to listen. He recognized the look on their faces' uncertainty. Catherine was planting seeds of doubt, and they were already taking root. "Dad, there's a news lady outside," Tyler announced, bouncing into the room. "I see her buddy. Just ignore it, okay? Get ready for school." But ignoring it became impossible when Catherine knocked on his door 20 minutes later, camera crew in tow. "Mr. Holloway, I was hoping we could talk on camera about the situation. Clear the air, so to speak." Marcus stood in his doorway, very aware that the camera was rolling. "Mrs. Davies, if you have concerns about the HOA's finances, there are proper channels. This isn't one of them. I've tried the proper channels. The current board won't return my calls. It seems like there's a lack of transparency that concerns me deeply." "Doesn't it concern you?" It was a trap, and Marcus could see it. If he said no, he looked like he was hiding something. If he said yes, it validated her fishing expedition. "What concerns me," Marcus said carefully, "is people who use media manipulation instead of facts. Your sister was convicted based on evidence, not speculation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get my children to school." He closed the door, but the damage was done. Within an hour, the clip was online with the headline, "HOA Scandal Accused Refuses to Support Transparency." At his job site that afternoon, Marcus's phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, neighbors, even clients who'd seen the news. His boss, Mike, pulled him aside during lunch break. "Marcus, what's going on? I got 3 calls asking if I employ the guy from the HOA scandal." "It's complicated, Mike. The woman who was harassing me, her sister moved in, and she's stirring things up again." Mike, a burly man who'd built his electrical contracting business from nothing, nodded slowly. "You need any time off to deal with this?" "No, I need the work. I can handle it." "All right, but if it starts affecting job sites, we'll need to talk." The threat of losing his income added another layer of stress Marcus didn't need. He threw himself into the work, finding peace in the logical flow of electrons through wire, the satisfying click of a properly installed breaker. This made sense. This he could control. But when he arrived home that evening, he found Jasmine in tears at the kitchen table. "What happened, sweetheart?" "Brittany Whitmore is back," she said between sobs. "Her mom brought her to live with Aunt Catherine. She told everyone at school that you framed her mom and ruined their family." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. Using children as weapons was a new low even for the Whitmore family. "And the worst part," Jasmine continued, "is some kids believe her. They're saying maybe you did lie about the trash cans." Tyler appeared in the doorway, his small face serious. "I punched Tommy Morrison for saying you were a liar." "Tyler, we don't solve problems with violence." "But Dad, he was lying about you lying." Marcus sat down, pulling both kids close. "Listen to me, both of you. This is going to get harder before it gets better. People are going to say things that aren't true. But we know the truth, and we have proof of the truth, and that's what matters." "Why can't we just show everyone the videos again?" Jasmine asked. "Because sometimes people don't want to see the truth if a lie is more interesting," Marcus said, wishing he could protect them from this harsh reality. That evening, Sarah Walsh called with more bad news. "Catherine's got enough signatures to call a special meeting. She's demanding an independent audit and wants to present her findings about discrepancies she's already identified." "What discrepancies?" "Who knows? She's probably going to take legitimate expenses and make them sound suspicious. Did you know the HOA paid for coffee at meetings, scandal, that kind of thing?" Marcus wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. He knew how effective that kind of misdirection could be. Make enough small issues sound sinister, and people started believing there must be something bigger hidden. The special meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. Marcus spent the intervening days gathering his own ammunition, every receipt, every video, every piece of documentation from Brenda's reign of terror. He also did something he hadn't done before he researched Catherine Whitmore Davies. What he found was interesting. She was indeed a forensic accountant, but she'd been let go from her last 2 firms. The reasons were vague, but a deep dive into professional forms suggested she had a habit of finding problems where none existed, of creating elaborate theories that fell apart under scrutiny but not before causing significant damage. "She's a chaos agent," Jennifer Martinez explained when Marcus shared his findings. "She doesn't need to prove anything. She just needs to create enough doubt and confusion that people stop trusting what they know to be true." Thursday arrived with all the fanfare Catherine had orchestrated. The community center was packed again, but this time the energy was different. Instead of unified anger at Brenda, there was division uncertainty. Catherine had done her work well. She stood at the front of the room in a conservative business suit, a presentation already loaded on the screen behind her. She'd arranged for her own microphone and speaker system, bypassing the board's control of the meeting. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice warm and authoritative. "I know this has been a difficult time for our community. Revelations of financial misconduct, a board president arrested neighbors turned against each other. I'm here to help us heal by uncovering the complete truth." Sarah Walsh, as interim president, tried to maintain control. "Mrs. Davies, you're not on the agenda." "The homeowners have the right to present concerns at any meeting," Catherine interrupted smoothly. "Section 4, Article 2 of the bylaws. Now, may I continue?" She clicked to her first slide, a complex spreadsheet that looked official and damning, even though Marcus couldn't make out the details from his seat. "In my preliminary review of publicly available records, I found some interesting patterns. For instance, did you know that every major violation fine in the past year was issued to someone who eventually opposed my sister? Because your sister targeted people who opposed her," Robert Kim called out. "Or," Catherine continued as if he hadn't spoken, "those who opposed her were the ones violating rules. Correlation versus causation, Mr. Kim. A basic principle of investigation." She clicked through more slides, each one designed to confuse rather than clarify. She showed payments to vendors without context, making routine maintenance look suspicious. She highlighted gaps in documentation that were really just transitions between board secretaries. She presented a timeline that suggested Brenda's arrest came suspiciously, soon after Marcus's trash can incident, implying a rush to judgment. "Your sister was arrested because of embezzlement, not trash cans," Jennifer Martinez stated firmly. "Was she, though?" Catherine asked, turning to face the room. "The investigation began because of Mr. Holloway's complaints. The same Mr. Holloway who admits to creating a dangerous trap that caused thousands of dollars in damage to my sister's vehicle." "It wasn't a trap." Marcus stood up, unable to stay quiet any longer. "It was a reinforced trash can on my own property that your sister deliberately rammed with her car." Catherine smiled, and Marcus realized he'd walked into another trap. "So you admit to deliberately creating something designed to damage any vehicle that hit it." "I created something to withstand being hit, not to cause damage." "A distinction without a difference, wouldn't you say? And interesting that you knew it would be hit. Almost like you were counting on it." The room began to murmur, and Marcus could feel the narrative shifting. Catherine was good at this, better than Brenda had ever been. "I have video evidence," Marcus began. "Ah, yes, the videos," Catherine interrupted. "Videos from cameras installed without HOA approval, videos that only show certain angles. Videos that conveniently start recording just before incidents occur. Very convenient. Are you seriously suggesting I faked being harassed for months? I'm suggesting that in any conflict there are two sides to every story. My sister's side died with her voice when you all silenced her." "Silenced her, Mrs." Patterson spoke up, her elderly voice cracking with indignation. "She terrorized this entire neighborhood." "According to whom? The people who benefited from her removal." Catherine's voice remained calm, reasonable. "I'm simply asking questions that should have been asked before rushing to judgment." She clicked to another slide, this one showing Marcus's house. "Mr. Holloway, isn't it true that your property value has increased by $30,000 since my sister's arrest? Everyone's property values have gone up since, so you have benefited financially from my sister's removal." "That's not." "And isn't it true that you've received payments from neighbors totaling over $5,000 since the incident? Those were gifts to cover the destroyed trash cans." "Gifts. Interesting word choice. Were taxes paid on these gifts?" Marcus felt the ground shifting under his feet. She was turning everything innocent into something that sounded suspicious. He looked around the room and saw doubt on faces that had supported him just days ago. Jennifer Martinez stood up. "This is a witch hunt disguised as an audit. Mrs. Davies has no standing here, no authority to demand answers. I'm a concerned homeowner asking questions, Catherine replied innocently. If there's nothing to hide, why not answer them? The meeting devolved from there. Sarah tried to maintain order, but Catherine had successfully fractured the community consensus. By the time it ended, a vote had been scheduled for the following week on whether to authorize an independent audit, with Catherine volunteering to conduct it for free. As people filed out, Marcus overheard conversations that made his heart sink. Maybe we should look into it more carefully. There might be more to the story. Catherine seems very professional. Robert Kim walked over, his face grim. She's good. Really good. She's twisting everything. I know, but people are listening. We need a counter strategy. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood in his garage looking at the painted concrete trash can that had started everything. Had he gone too far? Had he escalated something that could have been handled differently? No. He knew what had happened. He'd lived it. Brenda had tortured him and his family for months. The evidence was clear. But Catherine was proving that truth didn't matter if you could make people doubt their own memories. The next morning brought a new problem. Tyler came home from school with a black eye and a note from the principal. He got in another fight, the principal, Mr. Edwards, explained when Marcus arrived at the school, with Brenda Whitmore. Tyler hit a girl. No, Brittany hit him, but Tyler had apparently been following her around with his phone trying to record her saying mean things about you. He said he was gathering evidence. Marcus's heart broke a little. His 8-year-old son was trying to protect him the only way he knew how, mimicking what he'd seen his father do. I'll talk to him, Marcus said quietly. In the car, Tyler was defiant. She was lying about you, Dad. I wanted to prove it. Tyler, you can't fight lies with surveillance. That's not how it works. But it worked for you. Nobody. What worked was having the truth and standing up for it, not sneaking around trying to catch people. Then how do we fight them? Marcus wished he had a better answer. With patience, truth, and keeping our dignity intact. But dignity was hard to maintain when Catherine's campaign continued. She started a blog called Willowbrook Truth, where she posted daily investigations into the HOA's finances and decisions. She held coffee meetings in her home, inviting neighbors to share their concerns about the current board. She even managed to get a sympathetic article in the local paper portraying herself as a concerned citizen trying to heal a divided community. The vote on the audit was approaching, and Marcus could feel support slipping away. Even some of his allies were wavering. Maybe an audit would put this all to rest, Sarah Walsh said during a strategy meeting. If we're transparent, it takes away her ammunition. No, Jennifer said firmly. You give her access to those records and she'll spin them into whatever narrative she wants. Trust me, I've seen this in court. Give someone like her an inch and she'll take the whole neighborhood. Marcus's phone rang. It was Mike, his boss. Marcus, I need you to come to the office. The tone said everything. When Marcus arrived, Mike looked uncomfortable. I've got 3 job sites that don't want you there, Mike said without preamble. They've seen the news, the blogs. They don't want the controversy. Mike, you know me. You know I'm not what she's making me out to be. I do know you, Marcus, but I've also got a business to run. I'm not firing you, but I need to move you to back-end work for a while. Warehouse inventory, that kind of thing. Less money, but it keeps you employed. It was a demotion, plain and simple. Catherine was attacking his livelihood now, and it was working. That evening, Marcus found Jasmine crying in her room again. What now, sweetheart? I didn't make the basketball team. What? You're one of the best players. Coach said there were concerns about team dynamics. Brittany made the team, though. Marcus felt something snap inside him. Going after him was one thing. Going after his children was another. He stormed out of the house and across the street to Catherine's home, not caring who saw him. She answered the door with a smile as if she'd been expecting him. Mr. Holloway, how nice of you to visit. Keep my kids out of this. I don't know what you mean. Your niece is spreading lies at school. My daughter just got cut from basketball because of concerns. My son is getting in fights defending me. You're using children as weapons. Children learn from their parents' examples, Catherine said coolly. Perhaps if you hadn't taught them that violence and deception were acceptable. I taught them to stand up to bullies. And I'm teaching Brittany the same thing. Funny how perspective changes things, isn't it? Your sister was a criminal. Alleged criminal, convicted in a rush trial without proper investigation. The evidence was overwhelming. Evidence can be manufactured, Mr. Holloway, as you well know. They stood there staring at each other, and Marcus saw Brenda in Catherine's eyes. The same cold calculation, the same unwavering belief that they were right and everyone else was wrong. But Catherine was smarter, more subtle, more dangerous. "This isn't over," Marcus said. "No," Catherine agreed. "It's just beginning. You destroyed my family, Mr. Holloway. My sister is in prison. Her husband divorced her. Her children are traumatized. You did that." She did that to herself. "We'll see what the community thinks when all the facts come out." Marcus walked back to his house feeling the weight of what was coming. Catherine wasn't going to stop until she'd destroyed him the way she believed he'd destroyed Brenda. That night, Jennifer Martinez called with urgent news. "I've been doing some digging of my own." Catherine wasn't just let go from her previous firms. She was investigated for manufacturing evidence in a case. No charges were filed, but the client she was working for lost everything based on her findings that turned out to be fabricated. "Can we use this?" "Not directly. The records are sealed, but I know someone who worked at the firm. They might be willing to talk off the record." "Do it." The next few days were a whirlwind of quiet investigation. While Catherine continued her public campaign, Marcus and his allies worked behind the scenes. Jennifer's contact came through with damning information. Catherine had a pattern of this behavior, latching onto grievances, real or imagined, and amplifying them until the truth was lost in the noise. They also discovered something else. Catherine had been in contact with Brenda regularly, visiting her in prison, and those visits had increased dramatically in the weeks before Catherine moved to Willowbrook. This wasn't a spontaneous decision to clear her sister's name. This was a planned campaign of revenge. The night before the audit vote, Marcus called his own meeting. Not at the community center, but at his house. He invited everyone who'd supported him, everyone who'd been harassed by Brenda, everyone who knew the truth. 23 people showed up, cramming into his living room. Mrs. Patterson had brought cookies. David Martinez brought coffee. Robert Kim brought his laptop with all the original evidence against Brenda. "We need to remind people what really happened," Marcus said. "Not with speculation or character assassination, but with facts." They spent hours preparing a presentation not about Catherine's past that would make them look like they were attacking her, but about Brenda's documented crimes. Every video, every receipt, every testimony from the trial. They would present it all again clearly, irrefutably. "But will people listen?" Sarah asked. "Catherine's got them all turned around." "They'll listen," Mrs. Patterson said firmly, "because we're going to make sure they do. I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I've earned the right to be heard." The audit vote meeting arrived with the highest attendance in HOA history. Every seat was filled, people standing along the walls. Catherine sat in the front row, confident, surrounded by supporters she'd cultivated. Sarah Walsh called the meeting to order and immediately recognized Mrs. Patterson, who slowly made her way to the front with her walker. "Before we vote on anything," Mrs. Patterson began, her voice stronger than her frail appearance suggested, "I want to remind everyone why we're here. Not because of some conspiracy against Brenda Whitmore, but because of what she did to us, to all of us." She clicked a remote and the screen lit up with video after video. Brenda destroying trash cans, Brenda sneaking onto property at night, Brenda at HOA meetings threatening and belittling homeowners. "This is the truth," Mrs. Patterson said. "Not speculation, not theory, video evidence." Catherine stood up. "Those videos have never been authenticated." "Sit down, young lady," Mrs. Patterson snapped, with the authority of a grandmother who'd raised 5 children. "I'm not finished." Remarkably, Catherine sat. Mrs. Patterson continued for 20 minutes, methodically presenting every piece of evidence, every witness testimony, every financial record showing Brenda's embezzlement. It was devastating in its thoroughness. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Jennifer Martinez stood up. "I have something to add. Mrs. Davies has suggested this was a rushed investigation. I'd like to point out that the state attorney's office spent 3 months reviewing this case before filing charges. The FBI's white-collar crime division is now involved. This isn't a neighborhood squabble. This is federal crime." Catherine stood again, her composure cracking slightly. "My sister deserves—" "Your sister deserves exactly what she got," Marcus said, standing as well. Justice. She terrorized this neighborhood for years. She stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. She used her position to hurt people who couldn't fight back. And when someone finally stood up to her, she tried to destroy them. He looked around the room at his neighbors. Yes, my property value went up. Everyone's did once we were free from Brenda's tyranny. Yes, I received gifts from grateful neighbors, because I spent thousands of dollars fighting a battle that benefited everyone. And yes, I built a reinforced trash can, because I was tired of being a victim. Tyler's voice piped up from where he sat with Jasmine. My dad's a hero. A chuckle ran through the room, breaking the tension. I'm not a hero, Marcus said. I'm just a father who wanted to put his trash out without it being destroyed. That's all any of us want, to live in peace, follow reasonable rules, and not be harassed by petty tyrants. Robert Kim stood up. I move to vote on the audit proposal. Seconded, David Martinez called out. Sarah Walsh nodded. All in favor of authorizing an independent audit as proposed by Catherine Davies. 15 hands went up, mostly people Catherine had recently cultivated or those new to the neighborhood. All opposed. The rest of the room's hands shot up a clear majority. The motion fails, Sarah announced. Catherine's face went red. This is a cover-up. You're all complicit. No, Sarah said calmly. This is a community that's learned to recognize manipulation when we see it. Your sister taught us well. Catherine gathered her things, her movements sharp with anger. This isn't over. There are other venues, other authorities. You're right, Jennifer said. There are, and I'll be happy to present our evidence to any of them, including the evidence of your past fraudulent investigations. Catherine froze. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I've got 3 former clients of yours who'd love to share their stories about how you destroyed their lives with false accusations. The stare-down lasted 10 seconds before Catherine broke storming out of the meeting with Brittany trailing behind her. The room erupted in applause, but Marcus didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. The fight had taken its toll on his family, his job, his peace of mind. As people filed out, many stopped to shake his hand or pat his back. The community had held together, but the scars were visible. Trust had been damaged, relationships strained. It would take time to heal. Walking home with his kids, Tyler asked, Is it over now, Dad? I hope so, buddy. What if she comes back? Marcus looked at his son, then at Jasmine, both of them carrying burdens no children should have to bear. Then we'll be ready. We've proven twice now that bullies can't win if we stand together. Even smart bullies like Catherine, Jasmine asked. Especially smart bullies. Because the smarter they think they are, the more they underestimate regular people who just want to do what's right. As they reached their house, Marcus saw something that made him smile. Someone had placed a small sign in his yard, home of the Willowbrook hero. Looking around, he saw similar signs in many yards. We stand with Marcus, meet bullies not welcome, trash can warriors. Catherine's house was dark, her car gone. Word would spread quickly through the legal community about what had happened tonight. Her reputation already damaged would be finished. Inside, as Marcus tucked Tyler into bed, his son asked, Dad, what happened to the concrete trash can? It's still in the garage. Why? Can we keep it forever to remember? Sure, buddy, to remember. Later, sitting on his porch in the quiet night, Marcus reflected on everything that had happened. From that first destroyed trash can to tonight's meeting, it had been a journey he never expected to take. He'd learned something important. Standing up to bullies wasn't just about the moment of confrontation. It was about endurance, community, and the willingness to keep fighting even when the battlefield shifted. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Martinez. Catherine's moving out, just saw a for sale sign go up. Marcus smiled. Sometimes the good guys did win. It just took patience, persistence, and occasionally a really well-built trash can. 2 weeks later, at the monthly HOA meeting, something unprecedented happened. The board voted unanimously to create the Marcus Holloway rule, stating that any board member or HOA official who deliberately damaged residents' property would face immediate removal and potential criminal charges. They also voted to reimburse Marcus for all his destroyed trash cans and legal fees. But the best moment came when Mrs. Patterson stood up with a special announcement. I've lived here for 30 years, she said. I've seen this neighborhood at its best and worst. What Marcus Holloway did standing up when everyone else was afraid, that's what community is about. So I'm proposing we rename the community center Holloway Hall. Marcus tried to object, embarrassed by the attention, but the vote was unanimous. As the meeting ended and people headed home, Marcus stood outside looking at the community center that would soon bear his name. It felt surreal. "You deserve it," Sarah Walsh said, joining him. "You saved this neighborhood." We all did. No, Marcus. You stood up first. That matters. Driving home, Marcus passed Catherine's now empty house. A young family was looking at it with a real estate agent excited about the possibility of a new home. The cycle would continue, new families moving and new challenges arising. But the neighborhood was stronger now, more united, less likely to fall victim to another Brenda or Catherine. At home, Jasmine was waiting with news of her own. "Dad, I made the basketball team at the rec center. The coach there said I was exactly the kind of player they wanted, someone who doesn't give up." "That's my girl," Marcus said, hugging her tight. "And guess what? Brenda Whitmore's mom pulled her out of our school. She's going to private school now." Marcus felt a twinge of sympathy for Brittany. It wasn't her fault her mother and aunt were who they were, but maybe distance would be good for everyone. That night, as the family ate dinner together, Tyler asked, "Dad, do you think there will be another bad neighbor?" Marcus considered the question. "Maybe. Probably. But you know what? We'll handle it. We've proven we can." "With another concrete trash can?" Tyler asked hopefully. "Hopefully not," Marcus laughed. "But if necessary, we know how to make one." The celebration of Catherine's departure was short-lived. 3 days after the young family toured her former house, Marcus received an official-looking envelope that made his stomach drop before he even opened it. The return address was from the state attorney's office, but not in the way he'd hoped. "Notice of deposition," the letter read. Brenda Whitmore's defense team was calling him as a witness, and Catherine had apparently provided them with what she called new evidence before leaving town. The trial date had been moved up, and Marcus would be required to testify in 2 weeks. "This is actually good," Jennifer Martinez said when Marcus called her in a panic. "They're desperate. Calling you as a witness means they think they can trip you up on the stand, make you look like the aggressor. But we've got all the evidence. The truth is on our side." "The truth didn't stop Catherine from nearly turning the neighborhood against me," Marcus pointed out. "Catherine was playing to a small audience of neighbors. This is a courtroom. Facts matter there, not social manipulation." But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. That evening, while helping Tyler with his homework, his phone rang with an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Mr. Holloway," a gravelly voice said. "My name is Mitchell Crane. I'm Brenda Whitmore's defense attorney. I think we should talk." "I have nothing to say to you outside of court." "That's unfortunate, because I have quite a lot to say to you. Did you know your ex-wife Sandra has been very helpful to our case?" Marcus's blood went cold. "What?" "Oh yes, she's provided some very interesting insights into your temperament, your tendency toward what she calls disproportionate responses to perceived slights. The custody evaluation from your divorce makes for fascinating reading." "Those records are sealed." "We're sealed. Amazing what a good lawyer can get unsealed when establishing a pattern of behavior. I'll see you in court, Mr. Holloway. Do try to control that famous temper of yours." The line went dead. Marcus stood there, phone in hand, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath him again. They were going to use his divorce against him, paint him as unstable, violent, the kind of person who would orchestrate a conspiracy against an innocent HOA president. Dad, Jasmine, appeared in the doorway. "You okay? You look really pale." "I'm fine, sweetheart, just some work stuff." But Jasmine was too perceptive to buy it. "It's about Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it? She's still trying to hurt us, even from jail." Marcus sat down, pulling his daughter close. "Yeah, she is. But we're going to be okay." "How do you know?" "Because we've gotten through everything else. We'll get through this too." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He pulled out the boxes of divorce papers he'd kept in the garage, reading through them with fresh eyes. Sandra's accusations during the custody battle had been vicious, claiming he was controlling, aggressive, that his temper made him unsuitable for primary custody. The court had seen through it then, granting them joint custody, but taken out of context, some of her statements could be damaging. The next morning brought more bad news. Several neighbors reported being contacted by private investigators asking questions about Marcus. Had they ever seen him lose his temper? Had he ever made threats? Did he seem like someone capable of violence? They're building a character assassination case, Robert Kim warned during an emergency meeting at Marcus's house. They can't dispute the facts, so they're going to attack you personally. Let them try, David Martinez said. We all know who Marcus really is. But a jury won't, Sarah pointed out. They'll only know what's presented in court. Jennifer had been quiet throughout the discussion, taking notes. Finally, she looked up. We need to get ahead of this. Marcus, I want you to meet with a jury consultant I know. We're going to prepare you for everything they might throw at you. I can't afford. Pro bono, Jennifer interrupted. This case is bigger than just you now. If Brenda gets off, it sends a message that HOA corruption is acceptable, that bullying works. We can't let that happen. The next week was intensive preparation. The jury consultant, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, put Marcus through mock cross-examinations that left him sweating and shaking. You created a weapon disguised as a trash can, didn't you? She attacked, playing the role of the defense attorney. It wasn't a weapon. But you knew Mrs. Whitmore would hit it, didn't you? You counted on it. She'd been hitting my trash cans for months. Answer the question. Did you or did you not deliberately create something designed to damage her vehicle? I created something to protect my property by causing thousands of dollars in damage to hers. Round after round, Patricia hammered at him, teaching him to stay calm, to answer only what was asked, to not let emotion cloud his responses. It was exhausting, but Marcus could feel himself getting better, more controlled. Meanwhile, the neighborhood rallied. A fund was established for Marcus's legal expenses. People who'd been silent during the Whitmore reign came forward with their own stories. The local news picked up the story again this time with a more sympathetic angle toward Marcus. But Brenda's team was working just as hard. They leaked selective information to friendly bloggers suggesting Marcus had a history of violence. They found a disgruntled former client who claimed Marcus had overcharged him for electrical work. They even tracked down Tyler's second-grade teacher who mentioned in an interview that Tyler had some behavioral issues that year, the year of the divorce. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, Jennifer said. It's actually a good sign. It means they're desperate. The night before the trial, Marcus sat with his kids for a serious talk. Tomorrow I have to go to court, he explained. They're going to say some mean things about me, about our family. But they're lies, Tyler said firmly. Some of them are lies, some are truths twisted to look bad. But remember, no matter what they say, nothing changes who we are or how much I love you both. We love you too, Dad, Jasmine said, hugging him, and we know you're a good person. That's all that matters. The courthouse was a circus. Media vans lined the street, reporters shoving microphones at anyone who looked involved. Marcus kept his head down, flanked by Jennifer and Patricia pushing through the crowd. Inside the courtroom was packed. Marcus saw familiar faces from the neighborhood, but also strangers who'd come for the spectacle. And there at the defense table sat Brenda Whitmore in a conservative suit, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the raging woman who'd been arrested months ago. She'd been coached to appear sympathetic the wronged party. Mitchell Crane was exactly what Marcus had expected, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of commanding presence that made juries want to believe him. He smiled at Marcus, a predator recognizing prey. The prosecution went first, laying out the embezzlement case with methodical precision. The evidence was damning falsified invoices, shell companies' money transfers. Brenda had stolen $473,000 over 7 years, using her position to approve her own contracts and silence anyone who questioned her. But when Crane stood for the defense, he immediately shifted focus. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't about missing money. It's about a vindictive man who orchestrated a campaign to destroy a woman who dared to enforce neighborhood rules he didn't like. Marcus watched in growing anger as Crane painted a picture of him as an unstable, divorced father who couldn't handle authority, especially female authority. The custody battle documents were introduced. Sandra's worst accusations read aloud. According to his ex-wife, Mr. Holloway once punched a wall during an argument, terrifying her. Marcus wanted to scream that it had been after Sandra admitted to cheating that he'd hit the wall instead of saying something he'd regret, But Jennifer's hand on his arm kept him silent. Crane continued his character assassination for 2 hours, turning Marcus from victim to villain. By the time he finished, Marcus could see doubt in some jurors' eyes. The prosecution tried to refocus on the evidence, but the damage was done. The first day ended with Brenda looking like a possibly overzealous HOA president who'd been framed by an angry homeowner with a grudge. That evening, Marcus returned home to find his lawn vandalized with spray paint "Liar" in red letters across the grass he'd carefully maintained. "Don't let them get to you," Robert said, already there with solvent and rags. "This is what they want to make you snap-prove their narrative." "Dad, I hate them," Tyler said, standing in the doorway. "Nobody. We don't hate. We seek justice. There's a difference." But as Marcus scrubbed paint off his lawn while neighbors watched and whispered, he wondered if his 8-year-old son might have the more honest emotion. Day 2 of the trial was Marcus's turn to testify. He dressed carefully in his only suit, trying to look respectable but not wealthy, honest but not weak. Patricia had coached him on every detail, even how to sit. The prosecutor, a young woman named Amy Tillman, walked him through his story chronologically. The first destroyed trash can, the attempts at resolution, the escalation, the concrete can incident. Marcus kept his answers short, factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. Then came Crane's cross-examination. "Mr. Holloway, you were divorced 2 years ago, correct?" "Yes." "And during that divorce, your wife expressed concerns about your temper. She made accusations that the court found unsubstantiated. But you did punch a wall during an argument." "Once." "Yes." "Hard enough to break your hand?" Marcus hesitated. "Yes." "So when you felt wronged by your wife, you resorted to violence." "I hit a wall, not a person." "But violence nonetheless. And when you felt wronged by Mrs. Whitmore, you created what you called a reinforced trash can to protect my property. A 60-pound concrete block disguised as a regular trash can." "It wasn't disguised." "It looked like a regular trash can from the outside, correct?" "Yes, but..." "So anyone hitting it would have no warning that they were about to strike concrete and rebar. Anyone hitting it was destroying my property illegally." "That's not what I asked. Did you provide any warning?" Marcus could feel the trap closing. "No warning was required for property on my own land." "So you felt justified in potentially causing serious injury because someone damaged your trash can?" "I felt justified in protecting my property." "The same way you felt justified in punching a wall when angry at your wife." "Objection," Amy Tillman called out. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained," the judge said, but the damage was done. Crane continued for 2 more hours, picking apart every decision Marcus had made, every moment of anger, every time he'd stood up for himself, twisting them all into evidence of an unstable man with a vendetta. "You organized the neighborhood against Mrs. Whitmore, correct? I shared evidence of her harassment. You turned people against her. I showed them what she was doing. And when that wasn't enough, you manufactured evidence of financial crimes." "I didn't manufacture anything. The evidence was there. Evidence you went looking for after she damaged your car trap. It wasn't a trap." "Mr. Holloway, please control your temper." Marcus forced himself to breathe to calm down. He could see Jennifer's worried face, Patricia's hand signals reminding him to stay steady. "I discovered evidence of embezzlement while defending myself against harassment," Marcus said carefully. "How convenient. The one person who opposed you just happened to be stealing. She was stealing. The FBI confirmed it. After you provided them with your evidence, correct. Evidence that proved to be true, according to your interpretation." The cross-examination felt endless. By the time Crane finished, Marcus was exhausted, wrung out. He'd held his temper, hadn't given them the explosion they wanted, but he could see he'd been damaged. Some jurors were looking at him differently, seeing not a victim but a vindictive man who'd maybe gone too far. The prosecution recalled several neighbors to testify about Brenda's harassment, but Crane neutralized each one, suggesting they were now afraid of Marcus, that they were testifying to stay in his good graces. He painted a picture of Marcus as the new neighborhood bully, someone who'd used Brenda's removal to seize power. "Isn't it true that the community center was renamed in Mr. Holloway's honor?" Crane asked Sarah Walsh. "Yes, but..." "And that he received thousands of dollars from neighbors as reimbursement for damages." and that property values increased after Mrs. Whitmore's arrest. That's because she was terrorizing everyone. Or because Mr. Holloway's conspiracy succeeded in removing someone who actually enforced rules. It went on like this for 3 days. Every witness the prosecution brought Crane twisted their testimony. He was brilliant in an evil way, creating doubt where none should exist. On day 4, Crane played his trump card. He called Sandra to the stand. Marcus hadn't seen his ex-wife in months. She looked good, dressed professionally, her hair styled the way she used to for important meetings. She avoided his eyes as she took the oath. But this both said, Miss Holloway? Sorry, Miss Stevens, Crane began. You were married to the defendant for how long? 12 years. And you have 2 children together. Yes, Jasmine and Tyler. Can you describe Mr. Holloway's temperament during your marriage? Sandra hesitated, finally looking at Marcus. For a moment he thought he saw regret in her eyes. Then she spoke. Marcus could be intense. When he felt wronged, he would fixate on it, couldn't let things go. Can you give an example? Once our neighbor's dog kept barking at night. Marcus spent weeks documenting it, recording it, confronting the neighbor repeatedly. He couldn't just let it go. Did he ever become violent? He punched a wall once. Just once. Sandra paused again. He would sometimes throw things when angry. Tools in the garage. Never at me, she added quickly, but he had a temper. Yes, the kind of temper that might lead someone to create an elaborate trap for someone who angered him. Objection, Amy called out. Calls for speculation. Withdrawn, Crane said smoothly. Miss Stevens, in your opinion, is Mr. Holloway capable of orchestrating a campaign against someone he perceived as an enemy? Sandra looked at Marcus again, and this time he definitely saw regret. But she answered, when Marcus feels he's been wronged, he doesn't stop until he feels justice has been served. His version of justice. The prosecution tried to rehabilitate on redirect, getting Sandra to admit that Marcus had never been violent toward people, that he was a good father, that the divorce had been acrimonious on both sides. But the damage was done. His own ex-wife had confirmed the defense's narrative of him as obsessive and vindictive. That night, Marcus sat in his garage staring at the concrete trash can. Tyler found him there. Dad, why did Mom say those things? Marcus pulled his son close. Your mom and we hurt each other during the divorce. Sometimes when people are hurt, they say things that are true, but not the whole truth. She made you sound bad. She was asked to tell certain parts of our story, not the good parts, not the times I was patient or kind or fun, just the parts where I was angry or frustrated. That's not fair. Nobody, it's not. Jasmine appeared in the doorway. The kids at school are saying you're going to lose. That Mrs. Whitmore is going to get off and come back for revenge. Marcus looked at his children, these 2 amazing kids who'd been through so much. Maybe she will get off, I don't know. But you know what? We're still going to be okay. We have our home, we have each other, and we have a neighborhood that knows the truth, even if a jury doesn't. But it's not right, Jasmine said, tears in her eyes. You didn't do anything wrong. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean you win. Sometimes it just means you stood up when it mattered. The trial continued for another week. The prosecution presented financial records, FBI testimony, forensic accounting that clearly showed Brenda's guilt. But Crane had successfully muddied the waters, creating a narrative where maybe, just maybe, Marcus had manufactured or exaggerated evidence to get revenge on a strict HOA president. Closing arguments were a study in contrasts. Amy Tillman methodically laid out the evidence showing the clear pattern of embezzlement, the shell companies, the falsified invoices. She reminded the jury that Marcus's character wasn't on trial. Brenda's actions were. But Crane was a master showman. He painted a picture of a hardworking woman trying to maintain standards in her neighborhood, attacked by a bitter divorced man who couldn't handle female authority. He suggested the financial irregularities were bookkeeping errors blown out of proportion by someone with an axe to grind. Ask yourself, he told the jury, who had more motive here? A successful businesswoman with a nice home and stable family, or a divorced father working as an electrician struggling with anger issues who saw an opportunity to remove someone he couldn't control? The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 agonizing days where Marcus barely slept, couldn't eat, jumped every time his phone rang. The neighborhood was tense, everyone waiting, watching. When the call finally came, Marcus rushed to the courthouse with Jennifer, his hands shaking. The media was there in force, cameras ready for whatever verdict came. The jury filed in, not looking at anyone. Marcus's heart sank. In his experience, juries that convicted looked at the defendant. These jurors were looking everywhere but at Brenda. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor." "On the count of embezzlement in the first degree, how do you find?" "We find the defendant not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Brenda's supporters cheered while Marcus felt the world tilt. Not guilty. How was that possible? The foreman continued through all 15 counts. Not guilty on embezzlement, not guilty on fraud. Guilty on one count of misuse of HOA funds, a misdemeanor with a likely sentence of probation. Marcus sat in shock as Brenda hugged her attorney, tears streaming down her face. She turned to look at him, and the smirk on her face said everything. She'd won. Despite all the evidence, despite the truth, she'd won. Outside the courthouse, Crane spoke to the media about the travesty of justice his client had endured, how Marcus Holloway's vendetta had nearly destroyed an innocent woman. Brenda stood beside him, playing the victim perfectly. "Mr. Holloway attempted to frame me because I enforced rules he didn't like," she said to the cameras. "But truth prevailed. I look forward to returning to my life and my neighborhood." The reporters turned to Marcus, shoving microphones in his face. "Mr. Holloway, what's your response to the verdict?" Marcus wanted to scream, to rage at the injustice, but Tyler and Jasmine were watching from Jennifer's car, and he knew they needed to see him handle this with dignity. "The jury has spoken," he said simply. "I respect the process even when I disagree with the outcome. Will you be moving from the neighborhood now that Mrs. Whitmore will likely return? Willowbrook Estates is my home, my children's home. We're not going anywhere." Back home, the neighborhood was in shock. People gathered in small groups discussing the verdict in hushed tones. Robert Kim came over immediately. "This is insane. We all saw what she did. We have video." "The jury saw it too," Marcus said wearily. "They just chose to believe it meant something different. So she just gets away with it, with everything. Seems like it." Mrs. Patterson arrived, moving faster with her walker than Marcus had ever seen. "Don't you give up, Marcus Holloway. Don't you dare give up. What's left to do? She won. She won a court case. She hasn't won the neighborhood. We decide who lives in peace here, not her." But Marcus could already feel the shift. Some neighbors who'd supported him were now nervous, worried about retaliation when Brenda returned. Others seemed to be reconsidering their position, wondering if maybe they'd been wrong about her. That night, as Marcus tucked Tyler into bed, his son asked, "Are we safe, Dad?" "Yes, buddy, we're safe." "But Mrs. Whitmore's coming back." "Maybe, but she can't hurt us anymore. Too many people are watching now." "You promise?" Marcus hesitated. He'd learned the hard way that promises about safety were dangerous to make. "I promise I'll always protect you and your sister, no matter what." 2 days later, a letter arrived from Brenda's attorney. She was suing Marcus for defamation, emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit fraud. She wanted $2 million in damages and a public apology in the local newspaper. "She's trying to destroy you completely," Jennifer said, reading through the lawsuit. "This is vindictive prosecution." "Can she win?" "Not if I have anything to say about it, but Marcus defending this could cost everything you have." "I don't have much left to lose." "You have your children, your home, your dignity. Don't underestimate how much those are worth." That evening, Marcus called a family meeting. Jasmine and Tyler sat at the kitchen table, their faces serious. "I need to tell you both something. Mrs. Whitmore is suing us. She wants to take our house, our savings, everything." "Can she do that?" Jasmine asked, fear in her voice. "She's going to try, which means things might get harder before they get better. We might have to start over somewhere else." "But you said we weren't going anywhere," Tyler protested. "I want to stay and fight, but I need to know you both are strong enough for what's coming. If you want me to settle to apologize and try to make this go away, I will." His children looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that siblings can have. Then Jasmine spoke for both of them. Dad, you taught us to stand up to bullies. If we run now, what kind of lesson is that? Yeah, Tyler added. Besides, our friends are here. Our home is here. She doesn't get to take that. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. His kids were tougher than he'd ever imagined. Then we fight. We fight, they said in unison. The next morning brought an unexpected ally. Catherine Whitmore Davies stood at his door looking uncomfortable but determined. Mr. Holloway, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. I have something to say to you. May I come in? Against his better judgment, Marcus let her in. She sat at his kitchen table, the same place where she'd been painted as an enemy just weeks before. I know you have no reason to trust me, she began. But I've learned some things about my sister that disturb me. Such as, the jury got it wrong. I know that now. She pulled out a folder. After I left, I couldn't let it go. So I did what I do best. I followed the money. But this time I followed all of it. She spread documents across the table. Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore accounts. Brenda didn't steal $473,000. She stole closer to $1 million, and she's been hiding it in accounts under our mother's maiden name. Marcus stared at the papers. Why are you showing me this? Because I came here for revenge and I nearly helped her destroy an innocent man. That's not who I want to be. Catherine's voice cracked. My sister is sick, Mr. Holloway. She's a narcissist who believes rules don't apply to her. I see that now. What do you want from me? Nothing. I'm giving this to the FBI. The federal charges will stick even if the state ones didn't. But I wanted you to know first. You deserve that much. She stood to leave, then paused. I'm sorry for everything. Your children don't deserve what my family has put them through. After she left, Marcus sat staring at the documents. A second chance at justice delivered by the most unlikely source. He called Jennifer immediately. You need to see this. Within hours, the FBI had reopened their investigation. The new evidence was damning, showing a pattern of fraud that went back 15 years across 3 different HOAs. Brenda had been doing this long before Willowbrook Estates, but Brenda wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, she appeared on local morning shows crying about persecution, claiming Marcus had manufactured evidence once and was doing it again. She held a press conference on the courthouse steps, flanked by supporters she'd rallied through social media. This man has made destroying me his life's mission, she said to the cameras. When one false accusation didn't work, he created another. When will the harassment end? The court of public opinion was split. Some believed Brenda was a victim of an obsessive man's vendetta. Others saw through her performance. The neighborhood itself was divided, old wounds reopening. Then something unexpected happened. Other victims started coming forward. A family from Brenda's previous HOA in Georgia, a couple from the one before that in Texas, all with similar stories of harassment, intimidation, and missing funds. The local story went national. HOA president or HOA predator, the headlines read. The trash can that exposed a multi-state fraud. Marcus found himself at the center of a media storm. Reporters camped outside his house. Jasmine and Tyler had to be escorted to school. His boss finally had enough. Marcus, I'm sorry, but you're too hot right now. I've got to let you go. Mike, I need this job. I know. And when this dies down, you call me. But right now, having you on my payroll is killing my business. Unemployed under lawsuit and trapped in his home by media attention. Marcus hit his lowest point. He sat in his garage one night, beer in hand, staring at the concrete trash can that had started it all. I should have just moved, he said to the painted concrete. Should have just let her win. No, you shouldn't have. He turned to find Mrs. Patterson in his garage, having let herself in through the side door. Mrs. Patterson, it's late. Oh, hush, I'm old, I don't sleep anyway. She pulled up a folding chair with surprising agility. You want to know something, Marcus? I've lived a long life. Buried a husband, raised 4 kids, survived cancer twice. And the one thing I've learned is that the fights that matter most are the ones that cost us the most. This fight has cost me everything. Not everything. You still have your integrity. Your children still have a father they can be proud of. And you've inspired more people than you know. She pulled out her phone, struggling with the screen before showing him a Facebook group, Support Marcus Holloway. It had 50,000 members. People from all over the country who've dealt with HOA bullies. You've become a symbol, Marcus. That's why Brenda's fighting so hard. It's not about you anymore. It's about what you represent. The Facebook group Mrs. Patterson showed him became Marcus's lifeline over the next week. Messages poured in from people across the country sharing their own HOA horror stories, offering support, and incredibly donating to a legal fund someone had set up. Within 3 days, it had raised $40,000. "Dad, you're like internet famous," Jasmine said, showing him a TikTok video someone had made about the trash can incident. It had 3 million views. "They're calling you the Concrete Can King." Marcus winced at the nickname, but Tyler was thrilled. "Can we make merch like t-shirts with the trash can on them?" "We're not making merchandise out of our family crisis," Marcus said firmly. Though he had to admit the sketch Tyler had drawn of a superhero trash can was pretty clever. The media attention intensified when Catherine's evidence hit the FBI's desk. Federal agents raided Brenda's home at dawn, carrying out boxes of documents while news helicopters circled overhead. Brenda, still in her silk pajamas, was led away in handcuffs for the second time, screaming about persecution and frame-ups. This time bail was denied. The federal judge deemed her a flight risk after they discovered she'd been researching countries without extradition treaties. Mitchell Crane abandoned her case immediately, claiming irreconcilable differences in legal strategy, which everyone knew meant he'd seen the writing on the wall. Brenda was forced to accept a public defender, a young woman named Teresa Valdez, who looked overwhelmed from day one. But even from jail, Brenda wasn't finished. She managed to get a jailhouse interview with a sympathetic blogger claiming Marcus had planted the evidence with Catherine's help that the two of them had conspired to destroy her after she'd exposed Marcus's violent tendencies in court. The interview went viral in all the wrong ways. Brenda came across as unhinged, ranting about conspiracies and persecution. At one point, she claimed the concrete trash can had been an attempted murder weapon and that Marcus had been planning to kill her all along. "She's losing it," Jennifer said, watching the interview in Marcus's living room. "This is actually good for us. No jury will believe her now." But Brenda's hardcore supporters doubled down. A group calling themselves Justice for Brenda started picketing outside Marcus's house, holding signs that read, "Holloway = liar" and "Free Brenda." They live-streamed constantly, hoping to catch Marcus doing something they could use against him. The stress was taking its toll on the family. Tyler got into another fight at school when someone called his dad a criminal. Jasmine withdrew, spending hours in her room, afraid to face the judgment of her peers. Marcus himself was running on coffee and adrenaline, unable to sleep, jumping at every sound. Then Robert Kim had an idea that changed everything. "We fight fire with fire," he said during a strategy meeting. "They want to make this public. Let's make it really public. Show the world exactly who Brenda Whitmore is." He'd been collecting testimonies from Brenda's victims across multiple states, families she'd driven from their homes, elderly people she'd harassed, veterans she'd fined for flying American flags. The stories were heartbreaking and infuriating in equal measure. "We create a documentary," Robert explained. "Tell the real story, not just about the trash cans, but about the pattern of abuse. Show how one person standing up inspired others to come forward." Sarah Walsh's daughter, a film student at the local college, volunteered to direct. Within days, they were conducting interviews, gathering footage, piecing together a narrative that was bigger than just Marcus versus Brenda. The documentary, titled The Concrete Truth, premiered on YouTube 3 weeks later. It opened with security footage of Brenda destroying Marcus's trash cans, then expanded to show the broader pattern of HOA abuse across America. Marcus's story was the centerpiece, but it was contextualized within a system that enabled people like Brenda to thrive. The response was overwhelming. The video got 5 million views in the first week. National news picked it up. Suddenly, Marcus wasn't just a local curiosity, he was the face of a movement against HOA tyranny. Legislators started paying attention. A state senator called Marcus, wanting to discuss HOA reform legislation. A congressional aide reached out about federal oversight of HOA practices. The concrete trash can had started a conversation that was long overdue. But the attention came with a price. The Justice for Brenda group escalated their tactics. Someone threw a brick through Marcus's window at midnight, terrifying the children. His tires were slashed twice in 1 week. Death threats appeared in his mailbox. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Jennifer insisted after the third incident. "I'm not leaving my home," Marcus said stubbornly. "Dad, I'm scared," Tyler admitted one night, crawling into Marcus's bed after a nightmare. "What if they hurt us?" Marcus held his son close, feeling the weight of his choices. Was standing on principle worth putting his children at risk? The answer came the next morning when FBI agents arrived at his door. "Mr. Holloway, we've arrested 3 members of the group harassing you," Agent Sarah Thompson informed him. "They're being charged with conspiracy to commit assault and terroristic threats. We take this seriously." "What about my family's safety?" "We're placing a protective detail on your house until this situation is resolved. Nobody's going to hurt your children on our watch." The presence of federal agents had an immediate effect. The protesters disappeared overnight. The threats stopped. For the first time in weeks, Marcus slept soundly. The federal trial was scheduled for spring, but before it could begin, something unexpected happened. Teresa Valdez, Brenda's public defender, approached Jennifer with a deal. "My client wants to plead guilty," she said simply, "to everything. To the federal charges, full admission of guilt, including the HOA embezzlement. In exchange, she wants a recommended sentence of 5 to 7 years instead of the potential 20 she's facing." Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. After everything Brenda had put them through, 5 years seemed like nothing. But Jennifer counseled pragmatism. A trial could take months. More media circus, more stress on your family, and there's always a chance, however small, that she could get off again. A guilty plea ends this definitively. Marcus thought about Tyler's nightmares, Jasmine's anxiety, his own exhaustion. What about the civil suit against me? Dropped as part of the deal. She also agrees to pay restitution to the HOA and to never hold a position of authority in any homeowners association again. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was justice nonetheless. Marcus agreed to the deal. The sentencing hearing was packed. Victims from multiple states had come to give impact statements. Marcus sat with his children watching as family after family described how Brenda had terrorized them. An elderly veteran spoke about being fined for a flagpole that had flown the American flag for 40 years. A young couple described losing their home because they couldn't afford the escalating fines for imaginary violations. A disabled woman told how Brenda had tried to force her to get rid of her service dog. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood slowly, his prepared statement in hand. But looking at Brenda, seeing her sitting there in her orange jumpsuit trying to look contrite for the judge, he set the paper aside. "Your Honor, I'm not going to talk about what Brenda Whitmore did to me. You've heard that story. Instead, I want to talk about what she taught me. She taught me that standing up to bullies is hard but necessary. She taught me that communities are strongest when they stand together against tyranny. And she taught me that sometimes protecting what matters requires getting your hands dirty." He looked at his children in the gallery. "My kids have watched their father be vilified, threatened, and attacked for doing the right thing. But they've also watched him refuse to back down. They've learned that integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to fight for what's right, even when it costs you everything." He turned back to the judge. "Brenda Whitmore wanted to break me because I wouldn't submit to her authority. She failed. Not because I'm special or strong, but because my community stood with me. I hope the sentence you impose reflects not just the harm she did to me, but to all the families she terrorized who weren't fortunate enough to have that support." When Brenda spoke, it was with crocodile tears and hollow apologies. She blamed stress, claimed mental health issues, suggested she'd been misunderstood. Not once did she take genuine responsibility. Judge Martinez, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, wasn't buying it. "Dim di damki shatim." Mrs. Whitmore. "I've reviewed your case extensively. What I see is not a woman who made mistakes under stress, but a calculated predator who used positions of authority to terrorize and steal from your neighbors. You've shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught." She paused, looking directly at Brenda. "The plea agreement suggests 5 to 7 years. I'm sentencing you to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution to all victims, and you are permanently barred from serving in any fiduciary capacity." Brenda's composure finally cracked. "This is wrong. I was protecting property values. I was maintaining standards. These people are lying. As court officers moved to restrain her, she turned to Marcus. You destroyed my life over garbage cans, garbage cans. No, Marcus said quietly, but his voice carried across the courtroom. You destroyed your own life. The garbage cans just exposed who you really were. As Brenda was led away, still ranting about injustice, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in almost a year, peace. It was over, really truly over. Outside the courthouse, the media was waiting, but this time Marcus was ready for them. With Tyler and Jasmine beside him, he spoke briefly. Justice was served today. Not revenge, but justice. My family and I are ready to move forward and heal. We hope Miss Whitmore gets the help she clearly needs. What's next for you, Mr. Holloway? A reporter asked. I'm going to go home, hug my kids, and take out my trash in peace, with a regular trash can this time. The crowd laughed, and even Tyler and Jasmine smiled. Back in Willowbrook Estates, the neighborhood had prepared a surprise. The community center, now officially Holloway Hall, was decorated for a celebration. A banner read, "Welcome home, Marcus," and the concrete trash can sat on a pedestal in the corner, turned into a monument to standing up against bullies. Mike Marcus's former boss was there with a job offer. I never should have let you go. Come back full salary, plus a raise for all the crap you've been through. The state senator was there too, wanting to discuss the HOA reform bill that had been nicknamed Marcus's Law. It would limit HOA fines, require transparency in all financial dealings, and create an oversight board for complaints against HOA officers. But the best moment came when Mrs. Patterson stood up to speak. Marcus Holloway reminded us that we don't have to accept tyranny even when it comes disguised as rules and regulations. He stood up when the rest of us were too scared, and because of his courage, our community is stronger, safer, and more united than ever. She raised a glass of champagne to Marcus, who turned trash cans into triumph. The celebration went late into the evening, but eventually Marcus found himself alone with his kids on their front porch looking out at the peaceful street. Dad, Jasmine said, I'm proud of you. Even though it was really hard, Marcus asked, especially because it was really hard. You could have given up so many times, but you didn't. Tyler, always the more direct one, asked, would you do it all again? Marcus thought about the months of harassment, the legal battles, the threats, the fear. Then he thought about the families who'd thanked him. The laws being changed, the bullies who might think twice now before terrorizing their neighbors. Yeah, buddy, I would, but maybe with a slightly less heavy trash can. They laughed, and Marcus pulled them close. The street was quiet, peaceful. No one would be destroying trash cans tomorrow morning. No one would be living in fear of arbitrary fines or vindictive enforcement. A car drove slowly past, and for a moment Marcus tensed old habits dying hard. But it was just Robert Kim who waved and called out, Poker night Thursday, your house. Wouldn't miss it, Marcus called back. Normal. They were returning to normal. Not the false normal of before, where everyone pretended everything was fine while living in fear, but a real normal, where neighbors looked out for each other and stood up to wrongdoing. Can we keep the concrete trash can forever? Tyler asked as they headed inside. Absolutely. It's part of our family history now. The trash can that beat a bully, Jasmine said with satisfaction. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in a year. He slept without worrying about tomorrow. The war was over, and they had won. Not just the legal battle, but something more important. They'd proven that ordinary people could stand up to corruption and win. They'd shown that communities were stronger than tyrants. They demonstrated that sometimes the smallest act of defiance could topple an empire. The concrete trash can sat in the garage, painted in bright colors by his children, signed by neighbors, a monument to the idea that you didn't have to accept abuse just because it came with an official title. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter that made him laugh out loud. It was from a HOA in California asking if he'd consider speaking at their annual meeting about constructive conflict resolution in neighborhood disputes. Are you going to do it? Jennifer asked when he told her about it. Maybe, but I'm definitely bringing the trash can. Life had returned to a new kind of normal. Marcus was back at work taking on bigger jobs with his newfound reputation actually helping business. Mike had made him a partner, joking that having a folk hero on staff was good for the company image. Jasmine made the basketball team at a different league where her name was an asset rather than a liability. She was thinking about law school, inspired by Jennifer's work on their case. Tyler had started a YouTube channel about standing up to bullies with the concrete trash can as his mascot. His first video, "My Dad Fought a Karen and Won," had gotten 1 million views. The neighborhood had transformed too. The new HOA board, led by Sarah Walsh, had implemented transparency measures that made corruption nearly impossible. Monthly meetings were streamed online, all financial records were publicly accessible, and there was a clear appeals process for any violations. Property values had indeed gone up, but not because of strict enforcement of arbitrary rules. They'd risen because Willowbrook Estates had become known as the neighborhood that stood up to tyranny, a place where community meant something more than perfect lawns and matching mailboxes. One evening, as Marcus was working in his garage, a moving truck pulled up to the house 3 doors down Brenda's former home, which had been sold after her conviction. A young family got out looking nervous but excited. Marcus walked over to introduce himself, Tyler and Jasmine trailing behind. "Hi, I'm Marcus Holloway. Welcome to the neighborhood." The man's eyes widened. "You're the trash can guy." "We saw the documentary. It's actually part of why we chose this neighborhood. We wanted to live somewhere that people looked out for each other," his wife added. "We've had terrible experiences with HOAs before. When we heard what this community did, how you all stood together, we knew this was where we wanted to raise our kids." As Marcus helped them unload, sharing the real story behind the headlines, he reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, he'd been a divorced dad just trying to get by dealing with a petty tyrant who made his life miserable. Now he was a symbol of resistance against HOA abuse, his concrete trash can a monument to standing up for what's right. But more importantly, his kids had learned valuable lessons. They'd seen that bullies could be beaten, that communities could unite against corruption, and that one person standing up could inspire others to do the same. That evening, as the sun set over Willowbrook Estates, Marcus stood in his driveway looking at his trash cans, regular plastic ones, now sitting peacefully at the curb. No one would be destroying them in the morning. No one would be using petty rules to terrorize neighbors. The neighborhood had been freed from tyranny, all because he'd decided enough was enough and poured some concrete. "Dad," Tyler said, joining him outside, "do you think there are other Brendas out there?" "Probably," Marcus admitted. "Bullies exist everywhere. But now people know they can fight back, right? Like you did." Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. "That's the hope, buddy. Sometimes all it takes is one person saying no more to change everything." As they headed inside for dinner, Marcus glanced one more time at the peaceful street. Tomorrow was trash day, and for the first time in over a year, that thought brought no anxiety, no anger, just the simple satisfaction of a normal life in a normal neighborhood. The concrete trash can war was over, and the good guys had won, not through violence or intimidation, but through courage, community, and the unshakable conviction that no one should have to live in fear of the people supposed to represent them. The documentary ended with a shot of the painted concrete trash can in Holloway Hall, now a permanent exhibit with a plaque that read, "In memory of every trash can destroyed in the fight for justice, and in honor of everyone who refuses to be treated like garbage." Visitors from around the country came to see it, take pictures with it, and share their own stories of standing up to petty tyrants. It had become more than just Marcus's story. It was a symbol of resistance against abuse of power, no matter how small that power might be. And in federal prison, Brenda Whitmore spent her days writing appeals that would never be granted, still convinced that she was the victim, that maintaining property values justified any action, that Marcus Holloway had ruined her life over garbage cans. She never understood that it was never about the trash cans. It was about dignity, respect, and the fundamental right to live in peace in your own home. It was about standing up to someone who believed their small amount of power gave them the right to terrorize others. The trash cans were just the battlefield. The war was about something much bigger. The idea that ordinary people didn't have to accept abuse just because it came wrapped in official rules and regulations. Marcus Holloway had won that war not with violence or intimidation, but with patience, evidence, and an unbreakable will. And in doing so, he'd inspired countless others to stand up to their own Brendas, to refuse to be victims, to fight back with whatever tools they had, even if that tool was just a 60-pound concrete trash can disguised as a regular one. The story of Willowbrook Estates became a cautionary tale for would-be HOA tyrants everywhere. Be careful who you push around. You never know when someone might decide to push back. And when they do, when that pushback is rooted in justice and supported by community, no amount of power, money, or influence can stop it. Marcus had started as one man with a problem. He'd ended as a symbol of resistance, his concrete trash can a monument to the idea that sometimes the smallest act of defiance can topple an empire of persecution. And every Tuesday morning, when Marcus rolled his regular plastic trash can to the curb, he smiled, remembering the day he decided enough was enough and poured 60 pounds of concrete defiance that changed everything.